Hello, and welcome to another episode of the From Her View podcast with myself, Sade Camille. Woo, child. So, this is the podcast where we renew our mind with Jesus because that's the only way that we can exceed and excel and level up in our lives is dying to our old self and renewing ourselves with Christ. Child, I am going through it. Why? Because I've been trying to record this episode. This will be my third attempt. My literal third attempt. Super frustrating, just all around crazy. I have like this new audio setup and I'm still like working out the kinks, but for some reason when I'm recording, um it is just jumbling up my audio to the point where like I don't even want to listen to it. And it's like it's a podcast. If anything else, people might not want to watch it, but do they want to hear it? Because child, this sounds crazy. So this is my third attempt, and I guess it will be a lot more clearer, a lot more concise than what it originally was. If you're looking at the title, this is a part 2 of Chronicles of a Cocoarocker17. I started this episode back in, or the series rather, last year, and it happened because my sister was sending me photos of myself from high school, and just looking at that person, remembering how that person felt, and just feeling so far removed from them, like there were a person that I knew versus that is myself. Make sense? And so I had this opportunity to generate some extra income, and I was like, oh, yeah, this is awesome. This is going to be extra income. This is going to help with these specific goals that I have for myself because I'm very focused. I'm very aligned with what God is telling me to do. And so I wrote the plan. I'm working the plan. I'm working the plan to the best that I can do the plan. There's so many moving parts to the plan, which will be another episode. But really trying to do that. So it was just me and my son. We were driving around, and we found ourselves in my hometown, but more specifically, my old neighborhood. And so I began to do something that actually used to annoy me. My ex-husband used to do this. My ex-boyfriend used to do this as well. Actually, even a guy I dated did this, and I was just like so irritated. I get irritated by it. I don't know why. It just irritates me, but it's helpful, especially the last guy that I was dating, because I was in his city and my phone died. And because I remembered what he was telling me, mile markers are, streets are, highway exits where they spit you out at. That was the only way that I remembered how to get back to my hotel. It's one of those things where being the tour guide, so to say. So I'm giving him a tour of my hometown. Now, I'm a teen mom, so I had my first child at 18, pregnant at 17, and then I had my son at 20. And so he grew up over there, but he doesn't identify that as the place that he grew up. He identifies the place that he spent, you know, kindergarten, grade school, junior high, like those formidable years. He thinks of another place when he thinks of places that he's from, but on paper, he's born there. And so I'm navigating, I'm telling him, this is the high school, the castle. And I was like, don't you want to move back here and go to the castle? And he's like, no. And I'm like, okay, like you see that viaduct? That viaduct is over there. That's where your dad used to meet me when I got out of school, and he would walk me home, and or we will go to his friend's house or stuff like that. So I'm just like giving him like little bits and pieces of my memory lane. And it was one of those things that has kind of been on my heart, that I really don't talk a whole lot about my childhood or myself in general, if that makes sense. So I've like really like it's been highlighted to me, especially when I'm getting to learn new people, especially in the confines of like relationships and stuff like that. It's not like I don't have anything to say, or I'm ashamed, or I'm trying to hide it. I'm genuinely more interested in what that other person has to say. That if they say something that triggers something in my memory to say, then I'll do it. But off the rip, like I've never been that way. And it very much could stem from, a common phrase I would say in the Black home, but I feel like it's in all homes. It's like, what happens at home stays at home. It's very toxic. It's very demonic. That's a very unsavory thing to say because there are certain things that do happen at home that need to be said, and we do need help. You know what I'm saying? So I have in my adult life been labeled like a lot of things, or not labeled a lot of things, but more so seen as if I don't have a general understanding or a concept of what it means to struggle, or that I've never experienced any struggle. Most commonly, I get like, you must be an only child or you've never seen struggle, which both are false. For my father, I am one of six. For my mother, I am one of five. And for mom, I am number two of five. And then for my dad, I am number three of six. And so it's one of those things where I didn't come from that. I came from hand me downs. I came from being forced to share. I came from not being able to really have anything for yourself unless it was something that somebody was completely uninterested in, then it could be all yours. But for the most part, your stuff will get got all the time. And it's just one of those things I think that just comes with family, right? So I'm going down memory lane, literally, with him, having these conversations. And then, I was without him and I'm driving around again. And, I was remembering some traumatic things that I experienced while being a child, some things that not to mince words, I felt like I should have been protected better from. When I say I don't just mean me solely. I'm not the only one. I do have siblings, but there are certain things that I feel that my parents should have done better when it came to protecting us from certain things. And I also know now, being an adult, that things are very nuanced. And when you don't know what you don't know, it is very hard to see progress in any area. So when a person tries to tell me, like, you don't know struggle, you don't know anything, it was very important for me to have that time to really go down memory lane and discuss our origin stories. Everyone needs to remember where they came from. It is essential. It's very important. And there's a difference between remembering where you came from and then being grossly immersed from where you came from to the point that there's no growth. Have a different set of struggles, a different set of problems at the age of 36 than I did at the age of 17, at the age of 13, at the age of 7. All of them are very different. One of the things I'm very thankful for is the gift of understanding. I just understand too much. I understand the complexities of human nature, behavior, why people do the things that they do. I just get it. And sometimes me getting it would make me permissible to other people's behavior. God was like, no, I fashioned you to get it to help people get to the other part. You know what I'm saying? It's not for you to understand that, you know, your father ran to, drugs and addiction and a specific lifestyle because he didn't have the moral compass of a father figure consistently prevalent in his life. It's one of those things where at the time, being a teenager, well, first of all, daddy's girl. Okay. Always been a daddy's girl to the point that it would get me in trouble. Always been a daddy's girl. But as I grew older, one of the things I'm thankful for that my mother was never like, your dad is this, your dad is that, da da da. Obviously, I've had aunts, a specific aunt in particular, that would always be like, your dad is this, your dad is that, and just basically spewing word curses and hatred and negativity and everything like that, trying to like label us or labeled me specifically, because she was saying these things to me, but labeled me as something that I was not. And I'm kind of thankful that the thing was like, what they say, I'm rubber, you're glue, whatever you stay bounces off of me and sticks back to you, child. But anyway, just going over that there's so many things that were said and everything like that, his behavior. And so when it came to me just seeing that 1 plus 1 is coming up -12, I came to my own conclusions. Like, this is not how marriage should be. This is not how a father should be. This is not how a husband should be to his wife. And I could also say the adverse about my, or I could say the same thing about my mother as well. It's one of those things that when you become older, when you understand how God created unions to be, it makes more sense. Okay. It makes total sense as to why I just knew. I just knew. I've always known. And it was never one of those things where I accepted it as normalcy. It was never normal. It was always something that I was like, this is weird. This is odd. This is wrong. This should not be a thing. So I understand why he was the way he was, why he could not show up as a father. I understand it. I have since forgave him. I completely get it. He experienced something very traumatic in his life, and it's like I have to put myself in those shoes and be like, okay, this makes sense, right? There's always a cause and effect. People don't just wake up one day being a specific way. This has been a breeding ground for this behavior, and then the way that people act are symptoms of a bigger issue. So he couldn't show up as a father because he was robbed the opportunity to know his biological father, which is crazy. You know, the man died. His mother would never tell him. She would never tell him. And it wasn't up until after the man died that she told him. And it was just like, that's a void. To be a man, I'm not a man. Okay. I'm not a man. I know who my father is. I grew up around my father. I know his positive traits. I know his negative traits. So I'm never going to paint the picture like, my dad's the villain. He's not the villain, because God taking me down memory lane, letting me know that no, there were great times. You had great times with your father. Your father is a great person. He just had something that he couldn't overcome. So there's a difference of understanding now that I'm older, now that I can see on the other side. So then we have it where he gets a stepfather, right? And he finally gets that father figure. And he finally has the opportunity to see what it's like to have a man around the house, for a man to like really invest in him, to really care about him, only to have him taken from him. My grandfather, because my family, we don't be doing step grandfathers and stuff like that. That's goofy. A grandfather, right? He actually got murdered in a prison riot because he was a correctional officer. So he got murdered in a prison riot, and he got robbed that. So all along, he was looking for a compass, for a direction of how to be a man. And in order to numb the pain, people do turn to addiction, to being addicted to things as a way of escape, as escapism. I get it, and it's sad. I know that he will come out into the other side, because I also know the plan. Well, no, I don't know the plan now, child. I don't know all that, but I do know that he does have a gifting on his heart to be a pastor. My father can never meet a stranger. Everyone he meets is a friend. He's always had the gift of gab, the ability to just make a friend out of anywhere, to build connections, to network. That's just a gift that he has. And it's something that he passed down to his children, because quiet as kept, I don't enjoy people, But if I'm operating in my full gift of I just like to help people. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's a weird nuanced thing. It's like I love people, but I don't like people. You know what I'm saying? Like I have so much empathy for others, but at the same time, I'd be like, let me go over here. You know what I'm saying? But that's just how he was. A great cook. My mom was the breadwinner. She worked a whole lot. And my father would have like a job like here and there, but he would try to attribute to the household when he was in sobriety as best as he could. And he would do that by cooking. My mom would come home, she would have dinner made, the house would be clean. All he would ask is to leave him alone and watch ESPN. Like, I kid you not. We had a TV in our kitchen, obviously a TV in our living room, TV in my parents' bedroom. All these TVs would have ESPN. Feel me? And it's one of those things where we would go fishing. He was always down to like take us places, do fun stuff with us. And one of the other things was me and him had a bond of like understanding. Like we could have a conversation and completely understand each other. Whereas it was kind of difficult for me to have a conversation with my mom because it was like we didn't understand each other. Or I surmise it now that we are too much alike that it's hard to face yourself, if that makes sense. So God is walking me down this memory lane and really helping me see that, you know, you are not the defenseless young girl, hiding under a love seat because your parents are fighting and having a physical altercation, or you're not that girl that is sad when their birthday comes around because I kid you not, like, my birthday's in July. Like you think I was just having the most fun of all time. And this is some memories. This is not every birthday, but I do remember a couple of birthdays where it was just like I'm getting in trouble on my birthday for, things I can't control. I don't even know why. But they weren't happy days, they weren't fun days, you know what I'm saying? So it's not to say that we don't go through things, we don't experience adversity, that we don't have our own mountains to climb because we all do. And one of the ways that I explain it to my son, because I've told him a bit about my childhood for him to get understanding and perspective, to see that life is literally like a game of Uno. I say Uno because everybody knows this game, right? Life is like a game of Uno because everyone is, I don't want to say randomly, right? Because nothing is random with God, but we'll say we're all divinely dealt a hand of cards, right? And some of us have good hands, right? You could have, a deck where you have enough of each color that it doesn't matter what anybody plays, like you're good. You could have a deck where it's a bunch of draw fours, reverse, wild cards. You could have a hand where it's all green and the color has been blue and red and it turned green. I mean, you could just have that type of hand, but you could still win with those hands. You know what I'm saying? So I was explaining to him, like, the enemy will trick you into thinking that what you are experiencing is the worst thing ever. The woe is me. Not to be that type of person, but like the tiniest violin being played, he will make you think that there's no joy, there's no hope, there's no happiness in your life at all. And you have to appreciate that there were more good days than there were bad days. But the enemy will constantly remind you of those bad days. And it took me in a literal driving through memory lane to change my perspective on how I viewed my childhood, how I viewed my origin story. So now I have a big overarching view of everything that the enemy meant for evil, God meant it for my good. You know, First of all, I was one of those people or kids, teenagers. I was like, I'm never having kids. Oh no, I don't want no kid that be acting like me. Have you met me? No child. And then I get pregnant at 17, right? And it was one of those things that I was just like, oh my God. But thinking about it now, I was like, you know, it took me to give my mother a granddaughter and a grandson, and for her to be a part of their development, for her to experience what it's like to be a grandmother and to dote after her grandkids and to, because my mom was obsessed. Okay. I moved about an hour away when I got engaged to my ex husband. And my mom was like, I was like, yeah, girl, like, maybe once a month we'll come out here or whatever. And she was like, I will see my grandkids every weekend. What do you mean? And so, literally, every weekend, driving my kids back to my hometown to my mom's house, and she would have them for the weekend. Like, no, like, we kind of have plans to do this. Girl, tell my mama we wasn't about to come see her for no holiday. Child, you got me crazy. Like, no, it was something that she expected and she enjoyed, and I'm thankful for that experience for them. Now, she since in her passing has four more additional wonderful grandkids that are just off the chain with personality, like literally off the chain with personality. They are so funny and studious, all under the age of 6, but like very eloquent, funny kids. And I just love them. But it takes seeing things like that and know that God does give you beauty for your ashes. It's not a bunch of mourning. There is light at the end of the tunnel. So it's one of those things where you have to see that in the Bible, right? Jesus was with the disciples for 3 years. They're doing miracles, and those are joyous things, right? They also are seeing people in anguish, and that also has to do something with them or something to you when you see another person in pain, right? If you have compassion. But not only that, they saw their Lord, their Savior, their rabbi die. And some people could be like, oh my God, Jesus is gone. Like, oh my God, and completely forget about everything else that was done, everything else that was happening to know that you can overcome this. So when it says that Jesus overcame death, hell, and the grave, that's important because that same spirit is living within us. We can overcome the dead things in our lives, the hell in our lives, and the graves in our lives where we think things are completely dead and they're never coming back again. Those things can be revived with Christ. And so I really just wanted to talk about that, bring it up, like your origin story, because, you know, and I'll get deeper into the nuances of it, however Holy Spirit sees fit for me to break it down. So this is kind of like, I don't know. I don't know what to call it, the forward of the real story, but it's one of those things where I had that opportunity. I look back at it and I'm just completely thankful. I'm completely overjoyed with where my life is. Now, mind you, I am not where I know He has for me, right? I'm not there yet. But this was meant to revive something in me because for the past 4 years, I kind of like lost that dog. And that dog, meaning that drive, that hunger, that desire just to get it done or get it done. Because when I was, a single mom, 2 kids under the age of 3, it was very difficult. It was very difficult remembering, like going to school. So going to trade school to become a cosmetologist and just having so much hope desires, anxiety, and worry, and like, Lord, please let me graduate. Like, please let me graduate so I can get a job and take care of my family. And I did that. I very successful in that field. God had me put that field down. Okay. It's super devastating. It's super devastating, but I know that it is intentional. I can look at my experience in the beauty industry, and I still claim to be a part of the beauty industry because it's something that I love, but I can look at that experience and say it was very pivotal in doing a lot of things. I went back to school, became an educator, did platform artistry. So I was able to help other people grow in this area. But I think the most rewarding was being an educator because I'm taking people who either have previous experience doing hair and had to unlearn and learn some new habits, or someone who was completely novice and just really wanted to absorb as much as they could. But they all had a very specific similarity. They're all had like a little issue with confidence, and it varies in levels. And then they graduate and they're just, you can see the confidence shift the longer that they are in school. And I've, had the opportunity of helping, students as much as I could, but like helping them get jobs, remembering, helping give them rides home from school just so they could graduate, doing whatever was necessary. That's my heart. My heart is always to help. And I'm beginning to understand now that, the podcast is very important because it's giving me the opportunity to help whomever is listening by helping them evaluate certain aspects of their life. So it's very different for me to teach you a hands-on skill, a dexterity type skill, versus me teaching you, hey, this traumatic thing happened to you in your life. You have to give it to God. You have to be able to forgive those people. Why? Because the only person carrying the weight of that situation is you, and it's weighing you down. You feel me? The only one that was carrying around the weight of, oh, my childhood was this, oh, my childhood was that, was me, right? I don't think that my parents were super naive to, but they could very well be. They were probably very consumed with their level of things that they had to do, that they probably wasn't aware of how their actions were affecting their children overall. Sometimes when you are drowning, you don't realize that you're splashing all over other people and pulling them under. You don't always realize that. And that is from a person who drowned because somebody else was drowning and pulled me under. Okay, I almost drowned. So it's one of those things where you have to take a look at where you came from and see where you're at now, and see God in that, how you defied, how you beat the odds. You know what I'm saying? As a person who had a child very young, I'm not supposed to be able to pay for a very, very expensive apartment or have a car that I purchased for myself, or, you know, have a good education or make X amount of dollars. And not to sit here and say that it's all easy peasy lemon squeezies, because it's not. It is a ongoing thing of, Lord, you're going to provide and I'm going to just let you provide. So I hope you take the opportunity to examine your origin stories. Maybe take a literal path down memory lane and see, am I still that same person that I was way back when? Do I still have those same thought processes and pattern? Am I stuck in a loop where I can only see the negative? I don't see the positive in things. And give that to God. Our minds need to be renewed. If we are operating out of a spirit of negativity, out of a spirit of lack, out of a spirit of poverty, out of an impoverishment in the mind, everything we do in honor of that, right? If you have, poverty mindset, you will only look for the things that you can afford instead of trusting that God will give you exactly what you need and what you ask for, right? You'll be going around like, oh, well, I can only afford this, instead of being like, God is an abundant God. He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. His streets are paved with gold. He is my Father. And the righteous are never forsaken, nor are they begging for bread. So my daddy will always provide for me. Okay? Faith without works is dead, but still, you have to know that your Father can meet your need. He gives us the ability to build wealth, to work with our hands, to be creatives, because we are creatives. And that is actually a part of the curse onto Adam, is that he will forever have to till the ground to reap the harvest. So this is just something that we have to do. But we do also have the ability to speak life into things. And so if you are operating out of a negative spirit, a negative mindset, everything is going to be painted gray. You're never going to see the sunshine. You're never going to see the rainbows, because you have to speak those things that are not as if they are. So speak those things that we want as if they are. So I'm over here speaking, my house is this, my house is that. Do I own a house in the natural? No, but in the spirit, I own a house. It's very beautiful. It's got 5 bedrooms, a nice finished basement, 2 to 3.5 bath on a nice chunk of land. I have a garden. I have some chickens. Know what I have, right? Because God is constantly telling me and pointing me in these directions. So I know what it's going to be. I have to come into agreement with it. So this has been another episode of the From Her View podcast with myself, Sade Camille. I hope you take a look at your origins and to see that they are important in letting us take a test to see how far we have grown. And so we got to keep growing. And I'll see you guys next time.